Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Angela and James Craig and the very tragic events that took place just this past month. This case is, I just want to warn you, extremely sad and pretty disturbing. It takes a lot to rock me in terms of true crime, but this case definitely did. This case is still unfolding, it's still very fresh, but surprisingly, there has been a lot of information released to the public, so we're able to get a really good understanding of how everything went down. And what's especially interesting about this case is that there were a lot of texts and text conversation data released, and I think that's what makes this case especially heartbreaking, to be honest, is these texts, because you're able to see what a sicko James Craig really was. We'll go over all of these texts later in the video because I think it allows us to kind of see how everything happened from Angela's point of view, which is pretty interesting. So let's get into it. But first, I just want to say, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more true crime content. So let's start off by talking a little bit about who Angela Craig was. Angela was 43 years old when she was tragically murdered last month. She grew up in Dodge City in Kansas and was one of 10 children. She was described as having an unbounded sense of humor and would always elevate those around her with jokes, and she was always trying to make people laugh. She was also very intelligent and energetic. She loved animals, food truck food, mystery TV shows, and the outdoors. She was also really creative and worked on woodworking as well as interior design. And overall, it just seems like she was a really well-rounded person. And one thing that was really important to Angela was her family. In fact, she was said to be fiercely dedicated to her family. We'll talk about her a bit more later, but Angela was really close with one of her sisters, Toni, and apparently they would tell each other everything and talk almost every day. Angela was also very dedicated to her religion. She was a member of the LDS Church, so she was a Mormon. Her faith was very important to her, and she took on various positions within the church, including choir director, teacher, youth organization leader, as well as a family history consultant. And then in 2001, Angela married a man named James Craig, who was also Mormon and also from Kansas. It isn't actually known how the two of them met, but James was also from Kansas, so presumably they met there. And James was a dentist. He graduated from dentistry school at the University of Missouri in 2006 and went on to open his own dental practice called Summerbrook Dental Group. Angela and James settled down in Aurora, Colorado, which is where they were living at the time of Angela's death. And they had 6 children together, 5 girls and 1 boy, ranging from 8 to 20 years old. And Angela was said to be a very dedicated and loving mother. Her children were everything to her. And it's just heartbreaking that she was taken from her 6 children and that they'll grow up without their mom. Both Angela and James had happy photos of them as a couple and them with their kids plastered on their social media accounts. Angela frequently shared posts on Facebook of the family celebrating birthdays, having meals together, doing fun activities at their church, and it looked like they were a really happy couple and a really happy family. From the outside, James Craig was a very religious man with a 22-year marriage, a big family, a nice suburban home, and a successful dental practice. But that was far from the truth. During their marriage, James cheated on Angela multiple times. He had multiple affairs on Angela, and she actually tried to leave the marriage many times, but he somehow always convinced her to stay and give him another chance. Angela was described as a very forgiving person, and I can only imagine what position she was in with 6 children, and she was also very religious, so it might have been harder for her to leave the marriage than you might think. And although James was a very educated and smart person, and he did own his own dentistry practice, he was very bad with money. At the time of Angela's death, James was more than $2 million in debt. He had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in bad cryptocurrency investments, a Ponzi scheme, and gambling. And his dental practice was losing $120,000 a month. And he had already filed for bankruptcy in the past. He was not able to support his family financially. In fact, Angela had to start working at Summerbrook Dental because he couldn't afford to hire enough people. So now let's go over the timeline and discuss what happened in the 2 weeks before Angela's death. So between March 1st and March 5th of this year, Angela was visiting her sister Toni in Utah. And then on March 6th, Angela returned home to Colorado, and that's when she started to feel sick. That morning, she worked out with James, and as soon as he went off to work, she began to feel very dizzy and faint. She tried to lie down for a bit, but she just kept getting more and more dizzy. Her symptoms came on very quickly, and she was feeling pretty scared, so she decided to go to the hospital to get checked out. When she got there, doctors ran a bunch of tests and monitored her for a bit, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. So they ended up just prescribing her something for her dizziness and sent her home. She continued to feel very dizzy and wasn't getting any better over the next 3 days, and she actually passed out once or twice. She also started to experience a severe headache and was really uncomfortable, so she decided to go back to the hospital on March 9th. And she ended up staying there for 5 days while doctors tried to figure out what was going on. They ran all kinds of tests and monitored her, but couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. During this time, James was taking care of their kids and he continued to work, but he would try to visit her as much as he could. He was also keeping their friends and Angela's family updated on her condition via text. James' coworkers also knew what was going on and they were really concerned about Angela, so they were also constantly checking in and asking James for updates. After showing minimal progress, Angela was released from the hospital on March 14th. But the very next day, on March 15th, Angela went back to the hospital and she would sadly never return home. That afternoon, Angela suffered from a seizure and her condition declined rapidly, and she was placed on life support later that day, and her doctors told James and her family that she would not pull through. Her friends and family were shocked. Angela was a pretty healthy and active person, and she was completely fine only a week and a half before when she was visiting her sister. But now here she was dying from this completely unknown illness, and it was really scary. As soon as he found out that Angela had been placed on life support, one of James's business partners from the dental practice named Ryan Redfern came to the hospital to comfort James since he had just gotten this horrible news. But on his way to the hospital, he got a call from one of the employees at the dental practice, and she had some shocking news to share with Ryan. She told Ryan that a couple days earlier, James had told one of the employees at Summerbrook, her name's Caitlin, that he was expecting a package and asked if she could not open it when it arrived. When the package did arrive the next day, Caitlin realized that someone else had actually already opened the package when she got to it. Caitlin realized that it had been opened and quickly tried to tape it back up so that James would not know that someone opened it. And while doing this, she took a look inside and saw a canister inside the box that had a biohazardous sticker on it. This caught her eye, and she happened to look at the label on the canister and saw that it said potassium cyanide on it. She wasn't sure what that was at the time, so she just taped up the box and hand-delivered it to James. But Caitlin later Googled potassium cyanide and found out that it's a crystalline salt compound that is commonly used in gold mining, electroplating, jewelry buffing, stuff like that. But she also found out that it's highly toxic and ingesting it is usually lethal. She also looked up the symptoms of cyanide poisoning, which include dizziness, confusion, headaches, weakness, seizures, and so on. And what causes these symptoms is that when ingested, cyanide deprives the body of oxygen and basically causes the body to suffocate. And Caitlin actually started to put it together and thought that Angela's symptoms kind of sounded like cyanide poisoning. She started to put things together, and thankfully she did, because James had actually mentioned to a bunch of coworkers at the dental practice that he and Angela were having marital problems. He told his colleagues actually multiple times that he was leaving during lunch to go meet Angela and talk to her because they were fighting. And from everything I've read, it seems like a lot of the employees at Summerbrook were kind of sketched out by James even before all of this happened and Angela got sick. So luckily, she brought this theory or concern up to other employees at the dental practice, and the information made it to Ryan Redfern. Ryan agreed that this was very suspicious, and he knew that there was no medical reason James would need to order cyanide, like it wasn't needed for the dental practice in any way. So when he got to the hospital, he pulled one of the nurses aside and told them what he knew and that they should check for cyanide poisoning. And the next day, police executed a search warrant on the Craig's home. Investigators seized a water bottle, protein powder, workout mix shakers, a tablet computer, and 2 bags of white powder. It's so great that James' coworkers eventually caught on to what he was doing, but ultimately it was too late to save Angela. On March 18th, Angela was ruled brain dead and she was taken off life support. And she died a horrible death, a torturous death. She left behind 6 beautiful children that she won't get to watch grow up. She was a mother, a sister, a friend, and a daughter, and she deserves justice for what was done to her. And luckily it looks like she's going to get it because James was arrested and charged with first-degree murder of Angela on the same day. And there's lots of evidence stacked up against him. After his arrest, the Aurora police chief released a statement that said, "When the suspicious details of this case came to light, our team of officers and homicide detectives tirelessly worked to uncover the truth behind the victim's sudden illness and death. It was quickly discovered that this was in fact a heinous, complex, and calculated murder." So now let's talk about all the evidence that led to his arrest, and I will leave the arrest affidavit linked in the description box below if you want to read up on it further. The first thing that investigators discovered was that at the time of Angela's death, James was involved in yet another affair. Her name is Karen Kane, and she is a 49-year-old orthodontist from Texas. It's not known exactly how they met, but I think the assumption is that they likely attended the same regional dental conferences and events. At the time of their affair, Karen was married, but she was in the process of getting a divorce. And at this time, there is absolutely no indication that Karen knew what James was planning, and she just thought Angela fell ill like everyone else did at first. Once Angela had been placed on life support, Karen sent James an email on a Gmail account he made for the sole purpose of communicating with Karen, expressing sympathy about what he was going through. However, she also said, "I do want to give you any comfort I can, but I do not feel it is right for me to mix in with all of those gathered to mourn Angela either. And I do not want to meet your family as a friend and try to conceal what I feel for you." And police believe that this affair with Karen was the main motive for Angela's murder, and that James wanted her gone so he could start a new life with Karen. In the affidavit, police claim, based on the totality of the investigation, James has shown the planning and intent to end his wife's life by searching for ways to kill someone undetected, providing her poisons that align with her hospitalization symptoms, and working on starting a new life with a woman from Austin. It appears James was flying this woman into Denver while his wife and the mother of his children was dying in the hospital. Yeah, that's right. When Angela was in the hospital and James could only pop in and see her occasionally, he was not working, he was not taking care of their children, he was spending time with his mistress. Okay, so now let's talk about those Google searches that I just mentioned. Police took the hard drives from all of James' computers, even all the computers at his office, and they discovered some very incriminating searches in the days leading up to when Angela first got sick. These searches included things like, is arsenic detectable in an autopsy? How to make poison? How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? And he also watched a number of YouTube videos on the same topic, like Top 5 undetectable poisons that show no signs of foul play, and Top 10 deadliest plants. Police also pulled his online order history, and that was the real nail in the coffin. They determined that James most likely poisoned Angela with 2 kinds of poison, arsenic and cyanide. Police saw that a few days before Angela fell sick on March 6th, James had ordered arsenic from Amazon. And a couple days after that, he ordered a rush shipment of potassium cyanide that he told the supplier was needed for a surgery. At least with the cyanide, it was a little bit more controlled. James did have to give a reason for ordering the cyanide. He had to give his credentials and his medical license to obtain it. And the cyanide was delivered to the dental practice on March 13th, where Caitlin saw what was in the box. And he actually had planned to poison her with a 3rd poison called oleandrin. Oleandrin is a poisonous substance found in the leaves of an oleandrin plant. And James had placed an order for oleandrin, but police actually intercepted that package when they started looking into him. James tried to claim that he ordered the cyanide because Angela asked him to. James claimed that Angela asked him to order it because she didn't have the proper credentials to order it for herself. James told Ryan that he ordered it for her but didn't think she would actually take it. And not surprisingly, no one believed the story. James also told a social worker that Angela had been suicidal and depressed the last couple of months, and this was brought on by him asking her for a divorce in December 2022. But none of her children say that Angela was acting depressed or there were any suicide attempts. Police also spoke to Angela's sister Toni, and she said that Angela was definitely not depressed or suicidal. In fact, she was the one that was always trying to leave James. Toni also said that their marriage has always been tumultuous between the lies, affairs, gambling, and all the debt. Toni also mentioned to investigators that Angela told her that James has had a pornography addiction since he was a teenager. Lovely. So it seems like this case against James is very strong. There's a ton of evidence and a pretty clear motive. Not only did James kill Angela to start a new life with Karen, but he also could have done it to claim her life insurance. At the time of her death, Angela actually held 3 different life insurance policies. I wasn't able to find exactly how much they were worth, but we do know that James was in a lot of debt and he was going to be forced to file for bankruptcy in the next couple of months. Another part of the investigation that was outlined in the arrest affidavit was the text conversation between Angela and James in the days leading up to her death. Their entire conversation from March 6th all the way up until she passed away was in the arrest affidavit. So there are a lot of texts, so you can read the affidavit if you want to read the entire conversation, but let's go through some of the more important and incriminating parts of the conversation. Now, I do want to warn you again that I personally find these texts very upsetting. The texts that James sent to Angela over the last couple days of her life show what a pathological psychopath he really was. If you read these texts, you would think he was the most loving, kind, and sweet husband out there, but knowing what we know now, that was obviously not the case. So let's start off on March 6th, which is when Angela arrived home from visiting her sister. James says, "Thank you so much for making my drink this morning. I just love you. I hope you have a great day and I'm so glad you're back in town." Angela says, "You're welcome, baby. I love you too. I think my body is not letting the caffeine this morning either. My stomach feels fine, but my head feels fuzzy and dizzy. Very strange. It's been a week since caffeine for you. Maybe your body is saying no thank you. I did a full scoop of caffeine and a full big scoop of the B vitamins. Is that how much you normally take? I'm super shaky. Oh, no, I do a small scoop of the B vitamin mix. It feels really weird." And then he says, "Oops, sorry, baby." So based on these texts, it sounds like Angela made him a drink or a protein shake, and he also made her a protein shake. And when they're talking about the caffeine, I assume he means that he put in like pre-workout or something. And this is when police believe that James first poisoned Angela. And as you can see, she starts to feel sick right away after drinking this protein shake that he made her. It's so chilling to read him say, "I put a big scoop of vitamins in it." Like, he put a big scoop of poison. So then she tells him that she feels dizzy and that it's okay, it'll wear off. I'm dizzy and my eyes don't want to focus, but I can get the stuff done that I need to this morning. He says, "Maybe you should lie down." She says, "I'm lying down on my face on the mat in my room." He says, "You have a bed, you know." Then she seems like she's a bit suspicious. She says, "Just seems excessive for a little extra supplement." Then he just disregards that and says, "Pearl is flying in this morning to see me. I totally forgot. I think she's flying out today too though." She says, "I don't feel right in my head." He says, "Do I need to come home?" She says, "No, this is just weird. I'm dizzy in my head and my eyes are working slowly and my body is responding slowly." He says, "That sounds really wrong. I'm going to come home. I don't like this." "You can't, you need to work. I'll throw on some clothes and sit with the girls and see if it goes away." He says, "Okay, I'm probably overacting, but I don't like that. I can cancel patients for the morning or move some to Dr. P if needed, so if you change your mind, let me know." Then he asks her if she can take her blood pressure. She says that she doesn't know where a machine is. Then he tells her that she can take magnesium if she wants. Then he asks her, "Have you eaten anything?" She says, "I had my protein shake and magnesium makes me feel weird. This is not hungry." He says, "Are you nauseous?" She says, "No. I feel drugged." Then he says, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you. I am super worried though. You looked really pale before I left, like in your lips even." Now let's talk about what he means by given our history. James had actually drugged Angela in the past. According to Angela's sister Toni, in 2017, Angela began to feel sick and like she had been drugged, and she was pretty sure that James had drugged her. When she confronted him about it, he admitted it, but said that he did it because he was contemplating committing suicide and didn't want her to interfere. Over the next couple of days, they go back and forth. He suggests maybe she's having a stroke. He constantly asks for updates on how she's feeling while he's away at work. She's not getting any better. She says it might be a sinus infection. Then she goes to the hospital for the first time later that evening on March 6th. And then they continue to text the next day about her symptoms. She tells him that she fainted and that she has a really bad headache. He's very sympathetic and he says, "I'm sorry, baby, that sounds awful." Then she starts talking about going to see her doctor. She says her head is killing her. She says her doctor can see her Thursday or Friday. He encourages her to take the later appointment. Then on March 7th, he sent her this text that says, "I love you. It was so nice hanging out with you and just watching a show and snuggling. I'm sorry that you still aren't feeling well and that you feel like I'm disappointed about that. I'm not disappointed at all, just feeling empathy for how hard this must be for you. Hopefully things can improve and get better. I'm so grateful that the last couple of days have allowed me to have more flexibility in my schedule. God really does know what he's doing. Are you feeling anything in particular for dinner tonight or this week?" Then she says, "I'm having a hard time feeling okay being sick, and an even harder time knowing whether that's me or you. I could tell you were worried yesterday, but I guess I just think they sent us home and said nothing was wrong and you think I should be fine. I realize it could be revealing the past, it's just hard. And frankly, all of this is really scary and I don't feel like we've addressed that at all. But I don't even remember most of yesterday, so maybe we did address it. I'm a crazy person. I'm not feeling anything particular about food right now." And I think what she's referring to here is the fact that he drugged her in the past and they're not really addressing the elephant in the room. He completely disregards what she's saying and just says, "Oh good," when she says her sister is sending dinner. Then on March 8th, he checks in on her. "Will you please let me know when you're up? I'm nervous about it just being you and the littles today." She says, "I'm thinking about being up." Then she updates him on how she's feeling. She says, "Drinking my drink and sitting on the couch with my ice pack and 2 anxious dogs. No blurred vision or dizziness or anything, mostly just the headache." He says, "I guess that's an improvement over the last few days, question mark?" She says, "It's possible the headache will go away and I'll feel okay today, so yes. And my sinuses are cleared out and draining. I can breathe again and it's making everything taste gross." He says, "I'm sorry, but that also sounds like good news." Then he says he wants to come home and eat lunch with her. And she says, "Am I eating lunch? I'll need to gear up for that. I'm glad I get to see you." Then he says, "I'm glad too. I'll need to ask you what you're hungry for and bring it to you. I'm kind of feeling just a smoothie or something," which is so incriminating. As soon as she says that she's starting to feel better, he offers to bring her food. He wants to bring a smoothie because that's a lot easier to poison than pizza. And he's realizing that the protein shake he already poisoned wasn't enough. Then she says, "I'm not feeling anything. Don't bring anything. I'll eat something here." Over the next day, he continues to check in on her, checking in again. "How are you doing?" And then she doesn't answer, so he says, "You're scary." She says, "Sorry, baby. I fell asleep on the couch, and then I woke up. Now I'm hungry." And then he jokes, "I waited an entire minute, Ange." She says, "Thank you for checking in on me. I love you." He says, "I love you too. I like checking in on you." A couple hours later, he's checking in again. "Did you eat anything this morning? Baby, Ange, are you there?" He's constantly asking for updates, checking in on her to see if she's dead yet. It's so sickening. Then she ends up back in the hospital on March 9th. When she's in the hospital, they continue to text. He says, "I feel a lot less anxiety knowing that you're hooked up to monitors, and if I can't get a hold of you, it's not because you're dead." Like, you don't feel any anxiety. You want her to be dead. He continues to be sweet to her. In this text, he's talking about how home is without her. "It's fine, it's really busy and crazy, but that's always the case when you're not here. I want to be up there with you 24/7. I love you and miss you and I'm so worried. I wish you were healthy enough to come home tonight and snuggle me. But thank you for staying so that I can feel like you're being cared for by professionals." Then the next day he says, "I woke up dreaming about you and making love to you. I love you and I want you." Like, no you don't, you want her dead. Then while she's still at the hospital that second time, at the bottom of this picture, he offers to bring her soup. He says, "Do they have a microwave or something there? I'm wondering if I should bring you like a simple cup of soup that you can just microwave, or if I should just bring like a box of chicken broth. What are you thinking?" She says, "Maybe something that could be warmed up. They have a microwave. I'm almost done with the broth that they brought me. We'll see how that goes." Which we don't know if he actually ended up bringing her anything that she ate, but it looks like he's just constantly looking for opportunities to poison her again. He continues to be sweet to her. It just occurred to me that I have not brought you any flowers while you're in the hospital. I'm so sorry. I don't know how that skipped my notice. I think it's because I keep expecting them to let you go home at any moment. If I had known you were going to be here this long, I probably would have done a better job with that. He continues to act like the sweetest husband ever. I feel like maybe he was texting like this so that if the police ever ended up looking at their conversations, they would see how could someone be so sweet and then poison their wife. Or maybe he was trying to keep her from being suspicious because she had already inferred that maybe he had drugged her. Then she finds out that they're going to let her go home tomorrow, which was March 14th. And he says, I love you and I'm excited to bring you home tomorrow. And then the texts end off with him telling her that he's at the hospital to pick her up. Police believe that when she was brought home on March 14th, that James gave her a deadly dose of cyanide, and that's when she suffered the seizure that she would not wake up from on March 15th. I just don't understand how someone could do that to a person they were married to for 22 years and had 6 children with. How could you deliberately make someone suffer a slow and painful death and continue to tell them that you're worried and sorry they feel horrible when, like, no you don't, you did this to them on purpose. James actually just had his first court appearance on March 23rd where he pleaded not guilty. Like, good luck with that. I know I will be following this trial closely when it does happen, and my heart truly goes out to her 6 children. Not only did they have their mother taken from them, but they also lost their father in the process as well. I don't know of any places to donate to the family as of yet, but if I do find any, I will make sure to leave the links in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you found this video interesting, and please let me know what you think about this case in the comments below. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.